Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Quick Free Agent Draft Party. I'm your host, Mike Wall. I haven't been here for a while, so thank you for coming back and watching. Find me at Michael68 on Twitter, X, Process to Perform on Instagram. The show, as always, is sponsored by Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from the National Basketball Association and college basketball to the NHL, UFC. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, where the game starts. And okay, let's just so I was going to do a free agent tracker, and I usually don't do a lot of this stuff. It's really going to be more about the draft, and still, as I have a video for you guys at the end about a couple draft picks. I have had some technical difficulties because in the area of free agency, some of my media assets have been rescinded by players moving from team to team. So we're going to settle that out soon. But I did get some clips before it was shut off. So yeah, we'll get to it. But let's talk about this free agency. So the Packers end up going out and signing guard Aaron Banks from San Francisco 49ers, and then they signed Nate Hobbs, cornerback from the Raiders, really a slot corner. It really has been a slot corner. And then they lost, which I think is huge, to be fair. I think they're going to miss TJ Slayton, who went to the Bengals, so congratulations to him. I thought he had a fantastic year last year. A very, very productive, maybe outside of the traditional metrics player, although I think he had I think his stats were pretty decent. Banks and Hobbs, I think the initial feedback was that, okay, the Packers are offering these guys money that maybe was outside of what everybody thought was maybe they were going to get. Listen, the ultimate, and the other thing that is going to happen here is clearly this is not the same game, or excuse me, day one splash in free agency that picks up, an All-Pro, Pro Bowl Xavier McKinney, picks up a Josh Jacobs, who was first-team All-Pro, I think, 2 years prior. So these guys don't have the name value, don't have the name recognition, but the easy thing to do is to jump in and go, all right, well, there's always kind of two ways to look at free agency, depending on, how cynical you want to be. You're always overpaying, and you have to overpay in free agency because there's always going to be a suitor, regardless of where you think that guy is, particularly on day one. Now, you may or may not think these guys are going to be all pros, and did you overpay for them? It doesn't really matter because, for one, it's not your money, and two, it's a sunk cost. So now it's over. Now the only thing we can worry about is how they're going to produce and where they're going to fit in, particularly with Aaron Banks. They bring him in. He was a left guard in San Francisco. For me, there's always question marks when a guy hasn't been able to play 17 games over the course of the last couple of years. You look at the San Francisco 49ers offensive line. I've said this a number of times. I think they're a very average offensive line with a generational talent at left tackle. And I think a lot of the problems that you saw last year were reflective of Trent Williams not being in their starting lineup, and what that did as far as erasing the backside of their outside zone, protecting their blind side, all of that different stuff, right? Just having that physical presence. Now, Aaron Banks is 320 plus. He is a physical presence. He is not as good as a player as Elgton Jenkins. Elgton Jenkins is a better left guard in the National Football League right now today than Aaron Banks is. So if you start going, okay, why did they sign him? Why are they going to move? Here's the deal. He's 324 pounds-ish. Big body, good mover, plays well with his hands, does a lot of things at a good level for the National Football League. He is if you look at it from the perspective of you're losing Josh and Myers, and you're bringing in, I almost said Sitton. You're losing Josh Myers, and you're bringing in Aaron Banks. That is a net win for the Green Bay Packers. You have your two tackles. Everybody's talking about Rasheed Walker and Jordan Morgan. Anything could happen because Jordan Morgan's a first-round draft pick, and those guys get chances. But Rasheed Walker played well last year. You would be insane to try to take that, to try to make that an open competition at that position when he played as well as he did. So I don't think they'll do it. I have no idea. Who knows? I don't know anything, but I don't think they would do that. Obviously, Zach Tom is your best player on the offensive line. He's not moving anywhere. So you look at this and you go, okay, why would I make the left guard position weaker in order to do what with Jenkins? Potentially go at the center position is the only thing that would make sense. Then you start looking at, okay, we've got Monk, we've got Sean Ryan, who looks like he could play center. Maybe Aaron Banks can play center. And so I think you have, and a couple of those other, I think we have enough guys where you look at that and you go, we're not going to miss that spot as much. Now, there's so much that of the center position has to do with being able to identify offenses or excuse me, identify defenses and make calls. So if you think that because like Mike Flanagan and Frank were really good players, but what makes them really special is like I don't know if I can identify the defense and be as good on the call and snap the ball in shotgun is like either one. I'm sure I can either one of those guys. They were really, really good players. So if you feel like Elgin's the guy who's going to do that, maybe he turns it into an all-pro at the center position, then yeah, maybe you do move them. But otherwise, it makes a lot of sense. Now you've got two really, really good guards that are proven, and you can kind of protect that center position, getting the guy there who you think is the best mover, who can get to the second level, who's going to be the most technically sound and make the least amount of mental errors, and you can protect him with two really good guards. So that would be how I would attack that. We don't have to worry about what his contract looks like. We don't have to worry about. We can look at his tape to get an indication of what he looks like on the field, but he might look a little bit different at right guard. He certainly would look different if he had to play center, but it is not a good pickup because he is a better football player than in my opinion, than Josh Myers is. We wish him the best and of course expect him to make an 8-figure salary somewhere else in the National Football League. And then you look at Hobbs and you look, okay, well, we've got guys that have played slot corner here. Nixon being the most obvious one. Maybe they move him out. They bump, we obviously have two rookies last year, Williams and Bullard, who played a lot. They both ended up playing in the slot at one point, and the other Bullard finished the season at the slot. Does he drop back to safety? Or are you looking at Hobbs and he's going to be a corner? Is Jair Alexander still going to be on the team? Like, there's a lot of stuff to be answered. You can never have enough talent. And when you have talent, like right now, we have 3 talented safeties. And so you're going to find a place on the field for all 3 of those guys, whether Bullard stays at the slot and they move Hobbs out, whether they play some sort of star position that is a little bit more of a safety body type than maybe Hobbs is. Hobbs is, I think, 5'11", 185, 190, something like that. So really, really good athlete. Maybe not the biggest body in the world, but physically impressive enough to obviously play from almost day one in the National Football League. So you look at how these pieces fit in, and that's obviously up to the coaching staff to figure out. One thing that's always, the big takeaway from free agency is like, do you feel like your team is net better from signing the guy? If the answer is yes, then right now, whatever that salary seems like, and I don't even know why people worry about it, but whatever that salary seems like, be happy for the guy because he made a ton of money, is like it's not going to mean anything in a year from now because the salary cap keeps going up and yada yada yada. So you look at that. I think Josh Jacobs went on TV and said, "Okay, we need a corner, we need a rush in, and we need an offensive lineman. We got 2 out of the 3." I think everybody feels the same way. So it's like, who's left at the defensive end position? Obviously, the biggest news of the year so far is that Myles Garrett signs the mega deal. He's the highest paid non-quarterback in the league or defensive player in the league. Max Crosby resigns. Those 2 guys, cream of the crop, really the best guys in the league. Khalil Mack resigns. I think Josh Sweat resigns. So now, like, who are you looking at? You can bring in and make an impact. Matt Judon, who's been honestly has just traveled around a lot recently. He's a really, really good football player. He has like a good year every place, but I don't know what his age is. I feel like he's Patriots, Baltimore. I think he was Atlanta. I mean, he starts. If you get to enough teams, then it's like it's a 1-year fix, and like maybe that's maybe not the answer for the Packers. Joey Bosa is the name that obviously he's been hurt. You just remember when he was younger, how special he is when he's healthy, how special he is. At one point, the highest paid defensive end in the league for good reason. He was just a phenomenal player for the Chargers. Is he a guy that can come in and give you 2 good years? Maybe. The guy that nobody's talking about right now, and I don't know the injury history. I just know that I thought DeMarcus Lawrence was the best rusher and the best defensive end on that football team when he was healthy and playing with Micah Parsons 2 years ago. I don't know what the case was last year, obviously, but he is a very, very talented player. He's a guy that's a significant upgrade to anything we have right now in terms of pure pass rush. And kind of not only you look at those guys because they're all vets, not only the pass rush, but also what they bring to the table from how much the young guys can learn. Like, how innovative are they? You think about DeMarcus Lawrence in particular. He's got the inside spin. He's got the outside spin. He's got moves for days. And those are the kind of players you want to be you want to find curious young guys, and then you want to find some of these vets that are like kind of expanding their scope when they start thinking about what's possible. And DeMarcus Lawrence and Joe really and Bosa for two are really guys in particular that I think could do that at a high level. Going back to the offensive line, the only guys as you really look at free agency, like who do you really have a chance with? Obviously you see like the Tunsil trade to Washington. I think they gave up, second, third, fourth, and seventh round draft picks, and they get one of the best guys in the league. We don't need that position. There's always, I guess my point though is there's always these trades available that kind of jump out. I feel like they're coming out of nowhere. But just looking at the free agents that are available, like who are you really excited about? I mean, Mekhi Becton could be a guy. He turned it around. I mean, obviously massive body. He got his weight down. He's with Jeffs. If I was Mekhi Becton, I would do everything I could going from what you were when you got drafted to what you are under Jeff Stoutland and that Eagles offensive line. I would do everything. I would sign for, pennies on the dollar to stay with the Eagles just because you saw how bad it was without that structure, without that level of coaching, without that environment, that locker room play next to Lane Johnson. Without that, you saw what reality was, and then you see how good you are now and what the ceiling can be for a player with the physical qualities that he has. And you start thinking to yourself, like, I'm not going back to a Jet situation, so I want to stay in a really good environment. Brandon Scherf's been so good for so long. He's probably not. If you're looking at these guys, you're looking at Aaron Banks, you sign him, you go, okay, I'm hoping to get 3 years out of him. And I don't know where Scherf is physically. He's so good. I mean, he's good enough to have been considered on the All-Decade team. He's that type of player. He's really, really good. But you look at some of the other guys, like Will Fried's the top free agent. He's from Indianapolis. Like he's not a guy that jumps off the tape either. If you're looking at Aaron Banks or Will Fried, even though Will Fried is rated higher by the experts, you probably take Aaron Banks just because of body type. Then at center, that's the other thing that you go, okay, are we going to trade out and just get like not to just say Josh Myers, you're not good enough, but to send Myers packing and then bring in Ryan Kelly, who was injured but had some really good years a couple of years ago, was considered one of the better centers in the league. And again, where you're playing, who you're playing for, all of that stuff matters a little bit. That would have been an interesting, at least look-see. Now, do you have to overpay for him? And then you start going, okay, is that like how big of a difference is it in play in the last let's say year and a half, 2 years between, Myers and Ryan Kelly? You have to start looking at those things. And I haven't done a deep dive on that, but I can tell you it's probably not big enough to justify the gap in salary. So listen, it's not sexy. These guys are maybe not household names, but sometimes, there's a lot of like you have these stars on your team that everybody talks about, and then you have the team. And these guys, this is not a Josh Jacobs signing. This is not a Xavier McKinney signing necessarily yet. But these guys, you bring them in, they plug a hole and do a fantastic job. They're 2-3 year starters. They're solid. They play, Aaron Banks, he stays healthy for the entire season. He elevates the level of maybe physicality in particular with this line. This is one of those guys that is looking for work. So if he's got a call where he's uncovered, he helps the center, he goes and tries to knock the head off the defensive end. Those guys, we need more of those guys. I talk about it all the time on this show. So that's fantastic. You can elevate that level of play and maybe make that some sort of internal competition within the offensive line room. If we solidify the slot corner position and let Keyshawn Nixon go outside, and we kind of find some roles for Bullard and for Williams to be on the field at the same time, or if they move him out and we just say we're going to stick with these two guys and we feel really good about where we are at all kind of positions in the secondary. Like these are really, really big signings if things go well. Obviously, you trust in Goody and the coaching staff to make decisions on stuff like this, and so I love that. Now, having said all that, you're still looking for a rush end, and maybe that's going to be attained through the draft. You still could be looking for, Jordan Morgan might not play this year. The most obvious thing to do is groom him to be left tackle if in the event that Rasheed Walker, who I think is out of here next year with contract contractually, it's, obviously if they don't love him, then and he's not like a David Bakhtiari. and he's not necessarily like a Chad Clifton. So if they don't love him and they have a first-round draft pick who can sit for 2 years and learn that position, they can let him go and make $20 million a year somewhere else, and they can put Jordan Morgan there, and then we have our your offensive line for the foreseeable future. They just have to pay Zach Tom and call it a day. So what I've done is I've looked at 3 defensive ends, college guys, and I picked it up from guys. Thank you for the listeners popping in and give me some suggestions. I picked up Jack Sawyer. I picked up Donovan. I'm going to butcher this name. Ezeiruaku, who can flat out move. And then I picked up Johnny Walker Jr. based on name alone at a Mizzou. I also looked at Josh Simmons from the University of Ohio State. He's the last guy on there. He is the lone tackle on this tape. Like I said, circumstances have taken away some of my media access for the short term, but we'll take a look at these here soon, and we'll get some more out. Anyways, in the interim, let's watch this, and we'll get back to the end.
All right, taking a look at Johnny Walker Jr., number 15, playing against Auburn. Listen, the guy's name makes me interested enough, as is everybody I'm sure has said. I do know the right tackle from Auburn, so I can give you a little bit of insight on that. Some work with him last year. So already bracing before contact. He's standing up over here over the left tackle. So good job reading your keys. Love the crash. You just want to ask yourself if you can sell out. Is there anything you do more to sell out here? Get that play over the tight end over here on the right. Here we go. Over the left tackle. Stand up 2-point. Calm. A little more pop you'd like to see in his hands. Certainly does a good job standing up though. Yeah, this is just, you're not gaining any leverage. You can just say you're setting up for the game after your first step. First step so small, second step so small. Always difficult. You never know the story behind that, how they're being taught to do it. Doesn't accentuate your athleticism in that specific play though. There's not a lot of fight in him when it comes to trying to take care of 72 and collapse in that pocket. There's not a ton of explosion off his first step. You just feel like that tackle feels like he's in a great spot the entire time. And you see the tackle too, if we're just going to start looking at everybody. He's not exploding out of his stance necessarily as much either. You see the little dip right there and get out. It's not super fast, but he feels like he's in perfect position to make this play. You go into a 4-point over the tight end here, like a 7-tech. Might get picked a little bit there by his own guy. So we saw this earlier. Their cue was he sees that number go away with the tackle. He wants to crash. They get him with the pull here. So you just don't know. These are all the kind of plays where, if you see that end down and that backer around like this, the end's probably being told to take the handoff. And so this isn't really on him at all. There you go. Good little move. I like that stance a little bit better as far as getting out of it. Looks real fluid there. You're always talking about the same problem though, and this is more of a function of like you're lined up at a 7-tech or a 5-tech. You don't really have anywhere to go with that 3 technique. That B gap's already closed off. So You just start working these moves to try to get outside. But really, if the quarterback doesn't hold the ball, you're in a lot of trouble unless you decide to press the pocket at the top of the rush. Not a lot of plays off for this guy either. I guess this is what happens in college. So the tackle goes for the short set here. Flash, and ideally, like, you want to just attack this guy. You don't want to go back out. You're already wide. It just creates this situation where, let's say I feel like I have him right here. It's just so much space to get vertical. Like, you don't have a lot of, you got to get, in the course of that guy pushing on you for effectively 7-8 yards of width, like, you only have about 2 yards to mess around with from a depth standpoint. It just gets really difficult. So he's supposed to play wrong shoulder spill here, which he does. They shouldn't be able to bounce this unless he's supposed to take that guy head on. I mean, something's definitely wrong here. There might be a holding call on that pulling guard. So these are the ones that can kind of get you. He's deceptive. I like how, let's just talk about how quick he gets in. He gets in with that first step. He gets first step and hand placement. He steps right at the tackle on this first step. Right at him. And then press. Gets that inside hand. Really could have wiped off that outside hand and maybe got a little bit closer, rip through. But, good move. So you start building out this book on a guy and you go, okay, what are we pretty confident that he can do? And this is something that this will work in the National Football League. Certainly with some of the guys that are, if you're like 320 and under, this is a play that works. And particularly if you are able to create the short corner, not necessarily try to go right through him, because he doesn't look like a particularly massive or really, really powerful guy, although he looks like a decent athlete. So there's some things in his playbook that you like. Certainly you have to put some weight on, have to work some technique, and I think this is one of those guys where you have to make a decision. Let's get him good at either the stand-up or the three-point, just from a movement standpoint, to make sure his first step is more explosive. He can play through his hips a little bit better. But definitely a future in the league. Let's check out number 6 for Boston College, Donovan Ezeiruaku. I hope I said that right. I'm going to call him Donovan for short. And we're playing against SMU here, which is one of the teams I used to play against at Navy. So I hope they get their ass kicked. All right, here we go. 2-point stance squared up. See the explosiveness right off the bat. Athletic position. Other side of the ball, 2-point here. Good job saying square. You can just see athletically, he's kind of a standout guy on this field at least. This is always kind of bothersome. Look, obviously he's going to be first to contact with those arms, but you see he's got a load here to start playing. So that defensive tackle or offensive tackle gets a really good snap jump on him. So he comes down the middle, and just kind of what you're asking for if you're the tackle. Let's see if we can get a tackle edge a little bit more. Choose a side. Other side of the ball here. Okay. That move's going to work anywhere. Again, I think always out of 2-point stances that we're just talking about, look at his, I just want you to watch his first 2 steps right here. It's kind of a waste, yeah? I think that always happens out of a 2-point. I think there's very few guys that can just get into a 2-point stance and be fantastic and not false step. You see the playing out of a 2. You see the suddenness in the bend. Hands go inside immediately. Hips extend. I mean, that's just a pure demonstration of athleticism right there. Shows that he can play out of that 2-point against that tight end who's in a 3. I like that he plays both sides of the ball. This isn't anything he's doing. The tackle's just making a different decision. This is coaching, how they're being taught to do it. Ooh. That's fast. All right, so the tackle oversets here because they're in a slide pro and everything, but just let's not, I'll spend all day talking about what they're doing wrong on offense, but you see the gap, you see that he sees the gap, and you just look how smooth this is. There's no hesitation. He's not one of those guys that has to do a bunch of stutters, just a smooth mover. Longer player. So there's two things that are going on. This is kind of like a scouting report thing. With a longer player like this, let me move this over here. You see the first step comes all the way out here. And so you look at it, I can short set this guy, especially on play action pass stuff. These guys are always just difficult to play because they're so, you just see the suddenness and the long arm, the length. He's great with his hand targeting. There's just a real, I mean, just compare that to some of the other guys we watch. Just look at the suddenness of this guy compared to a lot of the other, even the guys in the National Football League right now. He's just a very sudden player. Probably on the field too much, for being honest. Okay, he's decided to do this move. He thinks it's some sort of play action pass, or I mean, he's going upfield regardless. The bend, he never actually hits the floor here. I mean, this is as impressive as you're going to see. Just not hitting the deck. He doesn't understand pass rushing yet. And what I mean by that is, at this stage, this tackle's one. I mean, and listen, they're sliding to him. And there's a lot of stuff, other stuff going on, but just fundamentally, you're never putting yourself in a position. I mean, unless you think you can bull rush the guy every time, you gotta do something to affect his set, and he hasn't been able to do that yet. It's really athletic. Offensive lineman. So he misses the sack here, but slow-mo. Well, I mean, he's gaining some ground. This is that angle rush that we always talk about. You're essentially going straight to the drop spot. You're not trying to cut any space, and then he takes his first step, dip inside, back out, double swipe, rip. That's as good as a move you're going to see if you want to be effective in the National Football League. Love to see him finish that play, but that's a good one to end on. That guy is a top prospect. You have Jack Sawyer from the Ohio State. First things first, it's just that Penn State game from last season. Strong player, understands how to set the edge. You see he ends up pushing the tackle back, kind of winning this matchup. As far as this doesn't turn into a stalemate, loses ground. Probably thinking about that tight end as he could go backside. See how he plays out of a 2 and a 3-point stance. Just looking at movement now. Passing situation. Just see there's not a lot of, first of all, the false step. Not a lot of action to him. 2-point inside foot back. Reading the play. Good pursuit. This indecisiveness at the line of scrimmage isn't really what you're looking for. It always allows the tackle to get into a good position. He really hasn't done anything, and I watched this entire tape. Doesn't really threaten the edge. Okay, so we watch this. Tackle's always short setting, so he's always coming flat. So there's a lot of things you can do there. The big thing is, are you going to try to take the edge and get a short corner, or are you going to try to step inside? The first thing you have to notice about Sawyer is just from a mechanical standpoint, he's always false stepping, it seems like. So he's never going to get to where he wants to go fast enough to really set an edge, or take an edge off somebody. He's going to always have to engage and then work off late, which he does a good job of doing here, but you can just see the initial footwork. Part of that's maybe because that tight end's in the way. But so far we've seen he steps back with his left foot more often than not. Tackle takes a terrible set. Obviously get washed up by the defensive tackle as well. 4-point stance, tight end up, or 3-point stance, inside foot back. One thing you can say about this guy right off the bat is he plays a lot of snaps, especially early in the game. I think he played the first 12 or 13 snaps. Good job releasing. You want to be a little bit faster with your hands. I don't know if he wouldn't benefit from maybe playing less snaps early in the game. I think this is design. Yeah, design play. Good job going and making the tackle. Lines up wide for the first time. Really could challenge upfield here. Let's look at the first step. Good job with the first. You see the power. So you see the first step, though, even though I say that. Watch your first step here, how it goes kind of away from. It ends up kind of going that way. And so you're increasing that width, which is fine, but you're really just trying, I'm trying to threaten an edge here, and then I have to determine I'm so wide, this is always going to end up in a bull rush unless that tackle is really, really flat. So it ends up in the bull. Good pressure. Ends up affecting the quarterback's throw. Got to be a little bit less sticky there. Just doesn't have a lot in terms of how to attack. You see that arm out by the tackle. Just sitting here kind of begging for you to swipe at it. He never really takes advantage of it. He's always trying to make contact first, so you're kind of giving the tackle the advantage of being able to give you a feel hand without really doing anything about it. And so he ends up the one that's, granted he's pushing the pocket there, but he's also has his head in the sand. So right here, just from a pass rush standpoint, you might very well be being told by your coach that you have to go all the way out there. But, in the National Football League, if you're playing 5-tech against a right tackle here, obviously they might be a little bit wider. There's always rules and defenses that we don't quite understand. But as you look at this and go, okay, are we challenging really anything here? It's like you're making this really easy for the tackle. Back second half ball. Just get a couple clips. Obviously a good athlete. Just kind of bulling around in there. You'd like to just see a little bit higher technical aptitude, and those are things you could teach. Does he play with good bend? Yes. Is he great with his first step? Not yet. It's this kind of stuff where there's a lot of, you'd like to see the contact then the read, not the read then the contact. Part of that's just having a plan. Okay, so this is obviously passing down. You look at the tackle's stance. He's clearly looking for a pass set. So this is true one-on-one. Let's see what you got. And he seems content. You see this a lot in the National Football League with some guys. Is they just seem content to go upfield instead of really are you pressing an edge? Are you threatening the inside gap? Are you working the hands? Really, are you trying to get as close to that person as possible? Remember, guys, we're time merchants. Okay, I'm trying to create time for myself or take time away from my opponent. In this case, he needs to take time away from that offensive tackle, and he's just not doing a great job of that. Good player, good school, all of that stuff. Just I think there's a lot to learn if you want to become a dominant rusher in the National Football League. Let's watch Josh Simmons here. Ohio State got hurt week 7. Left tackle number 71, number 1 in your hearts. So we're just looking right here. Obviously, very fluid mover. A little hop skip, not thrilled about that, but that's how it goes. Just really good mover. Can't see his feet there. All right, let's take a look. Love the bend. Let's just start with the kind of the basic stuff, right? You just love his stance. Gosh darn it. You just love his stance. You love his, his initial, we just call that kind of no numbers mentality. He's got his hips back. He's in an athletic position. Even though he's not in a 3-point, you can just see he can just drop his hand and be in his 3-point stance. It's like kind of the ideal position. You got that hip hinge position, being a great athlete, being able to move. Your initial footwork here. It's very deliberate, obviously. He's not concerned about getting edged on the speed rush. Love to see some hands inside. Athleticism is certainly there. He's working the shuffle on the backside combo. The way they run this, he doesn't try to put his head across. They run this almost like a deuce where you keep your head backside. Like the finish. Really good job engaging your hips. Oh. Open end. Can we tip his stance? Is he going to go to his... Yeah. So one thing we'll look at right away, he's got a wide stance and it's relatively flat. So this is a shotgun look. Empty set because they just got rid of the back. And you just look at, like, he's really square. I'm just, like, fantastic athlete, all of that. That'll be really tough to maintain in the National Football League. You just see his initial set here. 1, 2, and, unfortunately for him, he's playing against a guy who's already standing straight up, hasn't gone anywhere in his stance and all of that. But if you get edged by, like, a good NFL defensive player and you take that kind of set, it's going to be really difficult. Again, you can just kind of see how comfortable he is sitting on the bull. The one thing you got to love about this is, like, you have no idea if he's going front side, back side, and if he's going to try to pass that out of this in the NFL, I think that would be difficult. But man, it would be amazing if he could, because he's almost toe to toe here on his stagger. Keeper look, you just see the suddenness. You love the stick to he has. Let's just go back this up. This is little stuff. So you just backside hinge. Really does a good job of engaging his hips. Buys himself some time. So you can see here how he's going to have some getting used to moments in the National Football League. So having the flat set and then just being the forklift. When we say forklift, you're just kind of taking the arms underneath, hands are outside. And so you can see, like, you're going to get beat and get turned on in these situations. And, the guy gets rid of the ball and, all of that. But those are, an NFL defense end is going to look at that and get excited. He's almost like hinging here with his set. And a lot of this is just a function of, and he's able to get away with it, obviously, but when you're this square in your stagger, you're almost going to have to open and pivot. And then getting to, like, that next step where you keep a great base, you don't get vertical feet, is going to be relatively difficult. I think this is a somewhat of an easy fix. How often are you looking at your opponent? You see him, you see eyes out here. Backside of the hinge, cakewalk. So on the one hand, you don't like the set because he's flat, and so he's got to open, and then the second step, and you start getting what we call vertical feet. So in slow-mo, so he's got to kind of kick heel to toe, and then now he's already vertical. So in the National Football League, this is a bad thing. Having said that, he's able to just sit on this bull. He's got great hips. But you look, he's playing against a guy. I mean, he's not really giving him anything to look. If you do 100 snaps versus a guy who's going to run right down the middle of you, then you're going to win 100 times. Don't know what he's showing here with that move right here. I don't know what that is, but love it. I just like how he engages. He's under control. Does a good job, tries to finish his blocks. Now you can see a little bit more of like a, just the way he's leaning with his pass set, a little bit more of a stagger. And now, great square. Obviously just mirroring here. Really good athlete. Same idea. Doesn't bring his second, but you can kind of see now he's going to be able to stay a little bit square, and he's attacking this guy. This guy's not a great rusher. He's able to punch and extend, keep that separation, keep that time. And that's really exciting just from an athletic standpoint. You see the acceleration. I don't know what he ran his 40 in, but just looks the part for sure. Not that big. Like really well built. Not that if he's, you say he's 310, 315, which is a hell of a lot bigger than I was, but so pass pro here. See by the stance now, and you just don't like that at all. I mean, he's so big and strong, that's fantastic, but this from a set standpoint is going to really be problematic in the National Football League. And I'm saying that because you're going back here and you're just vertical, and you're vertical in 2 steps. So slow-mo it, back there, 2, done. Hands are down, lean forward. So if you're able, as the defensive end, to be a little bit more of a pass rusher here, you've got a lot of options and opportunities. You got the rip club, you got the chop of the outside, you got the jump chop, you got the outside club with the rip through. You can do a bull and work off. You can push horizontally and push the pocket and then release vertically to the quarterback. So there's a lot of options when you have a full repertoire that these players will in the National Football League. But with this guy, he's just able to kind of grab him and stop. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that at the highest level. He's just a very explosive player. So you see the stance is different with a set. So this is what you want to see every time. I mean, obviously you want to get more out of that first step. His kick's going to have to be more explosive. Again, this guy is not. You look at number 2, he's false stepping and all this nonsense. You're going to want to get back. But under control, great body profile. What do we mean by body profile? Look at the difference between this and that. Like, which one's easier to hit? In fact, 9's going to put his hands right in the middle of that chest right now. But look at the profile that this guy has. This is called just fantastic bend. You'd like to see the hands maybe a little bit tighter. But that profile, there's nothing there. There's nothing here that number 2 has on him. There's nothing he can hit. There's nothing he can grab. You don't have options. Right? Now you can certainly get off balance and beat him and all these kind of things, and having your hands that low and reaching out, it could put you in a bad position. But just from a body profile standpoint, and not giving the guy any action, I mean that's there's not a lot of players in the National Football League that have that. You think about Tunzel, you think about Darrisaw, like those guys, they just have incredible bend right out of the stance. Just not a lot of things for those people to hit. And then you see here maybe some of the problems. Like there's not a step. That first step doesn't really go anywhere. Look at that balloon. Doesn't go anywhere. Hands are back. Right, so now you're kicking vertical again. You're taking advantage of how good an athlete, how good a bend you have. But if you want to be a great player, you're going to have to work really, really hard at being better fundamentally.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter, MikeWall68, Process to Perform on Instagram. Check out the YouTube channel, Process to Perform. Thanks again to Bet Online, our sponsor. Show always is on the Believe Network. So go check them out. as things happen here, we'll talk some more, guys. If you have questions, X is like I'm not good on social media, but hit me up on X. I check it at least once a day. All right, thanks, guys.